Hello, my name's Daniel Mulino, the Assistant Treasurer. It's a great pleasure to be here today at the BYDA conference to speak to you on important research that you've undertaken. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging? And can I thank BYDA for inviting me to participate in this conference? And in particular, can I acknowledge Stuart Smith, the Chair of BYDA, and Mel Greenall, the CEO. But also can I acknowledge all of the other members of the organisation who undoubtedly have been working incredibly hard to make today the conference possible, but also to all the participants. The issues that you're discussing are incredibly important for our economy and represent very critical issues for potential productivity growth going forward. Can I just start by saying that the issues that you're flagging relate to one of the largest and most important sectors in our economy, construction, which underpins so much. It's critical for our infrastructure, it's critical for Australia delivering houses, critical for us delivering so much of our broader infrastructure around the energy transition and our utilities. And the issues that you've flagged indicate that there are some serious regulatory challenges and opportunities that we need to grapple with. You've highlighted in your research that there are at the moment many instances, thousands of instances a year, where there are interruptions to construction projects, many of which could have been avoided. This leads to delay, it leads to uncertainty, and it leads to cost. But importantly, and this is also something you highlight, it's a very serious safety issue. And so I think it's really important that we think about whether or not we can do things better. The research that you've undertaken is really important and rigorous. It involved a number of interviews, a number of in-depth qualitative pieces of research with key players in the sector, surveys, and also a literature review and comparison of what's going on in key jurisdictions around the world. So that, I think, sets a really important base for an evidence base and an analytical base for going forward on some of the key regulatory issues that you've flagged. You've indicated that at the moment, what we're doing in Australia is not coordinated enough across jurisdictions, that it is often paper-based, that it is static, that the information is complex and often uncertain in quality, and that too many aspects of what we're doing aren't mandated in some jurisdictions. And so that leads to considerable increases in the number of disruptions compared to what best practice might indicate is possible. This means that there's a real opportunity for productivity gains, for better practice, and as I indicated earlier, for safer arrangements, for less accidents and less serious injuries and deaths, which is obviously the most important consideration of all. I just wanted to briefly touch on some of the regulatory considerations that your report flags. And indeed, as Assistant Treasurer, I'm obviously very interested in productivity opportunities across the economy as a whole. But can I say that some of the regulatory challenges that you flag in your paper also directly relate to some of the issues that I'm grappling with in my own portfolio with financial services and with tax in those areas. So one of the issues that you touch on is risk. Who bears risk? Who understands risk the most? But also, you raise questions around, do we actually understand the underlying causes of a lot of the interruptions that our economy is dealing with, and your sector rather in particular, through some of the issues that occur? That issue of risk is really foundational to regulation, and it arises often in my own portfolio in how we regulate financial services. It often it is often involved in issues relating to government procurement, to government contracting. I think the way that you've identified risk as one of the things that we really need to think about deeply is extremely important. And your research, the surveys that you undertook, the interviews that you undertook, I think, really go to that issue of risk and identify in a lot of different contexts the ways in which we need to better understand risk before we design regulation that allocates risk and identifies who should bear it. The second one is you raise a lot of important issues around the regulatory approach. For example, where should we mandate and where should we empower people to make decisions within a broader, complex, dynamic environment? And again, this is a set of deep regulatory issues that applies in many contexts. In my own portfolio, the issue of disclosure in many contexts is key versus should we mandate or proscribe or ban certain products in certain circumstances. So this is a really deep regulatory issue, in my view, in many contexts. Where should regulators restrict choices? Where should they put very firm guardrails? Versus where should they empower decision makers? And often it's a bit of both. Often it's a question of trade-offs and figuring out where the boundary should be. But I think your paper identifies that there are really tricky regulatory issues here, and it's only through better understanding the real-world implications of some of the situations that we face that I think we can better design regulation. So I did want to identify that as one of the themes that I saw running through the paper. The other theme that I think ran through the paper was digitisation. The paper identifies a lot of opportunities for better outcomes where there is more reliable information, but also more accessible information in digital form. And I think, again, this is something which arises in a lot of areas, including the ones that I directly have responsibility for in financial services. It often arises in government in terms of the way it delivers services itself. And one of the challenges here is thinking through how much of digitisation is going to occur organically through, for example, competitive tensions in a sector, how much of it will occur through the desire for companies to achieve efficiency gains in their own operations versus how much do we need to mandate through appropriate regulation. And indeed, to the extent that digitisation is occurring organically or through decisions being made through participants in sectors, how much of that can be facilitated and be made more efficient through government setting appropriate benchmarks or standards for the way in which information is shared. So I think your paper went a long way to highlighting some of those issues. The digitisation of information, in my view, is one of the great productivity opportunities. And in this sector in particular, I think you highlighted a number of instances where there are real opportunities there. Your paper also usefully looks at a number of systems around the world, including in Europe and in North America. And I think that a lot of those systems have pros and cons relative to what we're doing. But what was clear to me is that there are certainly some lessons to be learned. And again, that was another strength of the paper and another example of where there are opportunities. So the opportunity I think that you've identified in your paper and that I'm sure you'll be discussing at today's conference involves a number of dimensions. Where do we need to strengthen regulation? Where do we need to potentially mandate more activity, more information sharing? Where do we need to, through mandating, potentially clarify obligations? How much gain is there from aligning across jurisdictions? How much should we lean in when it comes to digitisation? And how can we best empower those who are making decisions to complement whatever guardrails we put in place? But can I just say that this set of issues that you've flagged is really critical. They relate to a sector that is touching all our lives, that is absolutely central to our economy. And I really look forward to continuing to hear from your sector about the opportunities for productivity growth. This government and the economic team in particular, of which I'm a part, see productivity growth as absolutely central to our economic opportunities going forward. Lifting productivity is absolutely key to fulfilling our economic potential and to lifting our standard of living in the long run. And I applaud you for the contribution to a better understanding of some of the regulatory challenges that we face and the opportunities through this work. And I look forward to hearing about all that you achieve over the course of the conference. Thank you again for the chance to contribute to today's discussion.